The whisper of a masked woman. It all began in a narrow alley. In Japan, they say that if you hear footsteps behind you late at night in an empty alley, don't turn around. And if a woman in a long coat and surgical mask stops you, whatever you don't answer her question, because what she asks could cost you your life. For decades, the tale of the Kuchisake-Onna, or slit-mouthed woman, has haunted the dark corners of Japanese cities. It's not just a ghost story told by children huddled under blankets. No, it's a story that caused actual panic in the late 1970s. Children were pulled out of schools. Police increased patrols, and parents whispered prayers before letting their kids out after sunset. But where did it all begin? Many believe the first reports surfaced in Gifu Prefecture, in a quiet neighborhood where narrow alleys wound between wooden houses, and vending machines flickered in the night. People started whispering about a strange woman roaming the streets. She wore a surgical mask, not uncommon in Japan, but there was something off about her. Her eyes never blinked. Her steps were too smooth, like she was gliding. And worst of all, she always asked the same thing. Do you think I'm pretty? At first, people laughed. It sounded like a strange prank. But then came the chilling second part. If someone said yes, she would remove her mask, revealing a grotesque smile, slashed from ear to ear, as if someone had cut her mouth open with a blade. Then she'd ask again, even now, and if you still said yes, she would cut your face to look just like hers. If you said no from the start, she'd get angry, very angry, and according to witnesses, if any could be called, Thatch would chase you down, wielding a pair of rusty scissors, and slash your mouth wide open. Some claimed you'd die instantly. Others believed you'd survive but be cursed to become like her. It didn't take long before this story bled into reality. By 1979, reports started surfacing in newspapers across Japan. Children were terrified to walk to school alone. They said they saw a woman in a beige trench coat standing motionless near traffic lights. She would follow them silently. One student from Nagasaki said he heard breathing behind him, heavy, slow breathing, and when he turned around, no one was there. Another child swore he saw a woman staring at him from outside his classroom window. On the third floor, police initially dismissed these as pranks or mass hysteria. But something didn't add up. The reports came from different cities, hours apart. The descriptions were identical. Long black hair, pale skin, surgical mask, rusty scissors, and always the same question. Do you think I'm pretty? To understand why the story became so powerful, you have to understand something about Japanese folklore. In Japan, ghosts aren't always vague shadows or floating orbs. Many of them are vengeful spirit souls who died with deep regret, pain, or rage, and who refuse to move on. They become onryu, spirits that haunt the living, often in grotesque forms. Kuchisake-Onna fits this mold perfectly. Some legends say she was once a beautiful woman, maybe even a courtesan or nobleman's mistress. Jealousy led to her downfall, either from a husband, a lover, or a rival. Her mouth was ripped open in rage, a punishment for her beauty or vanity. And now, she seeks to reclaim what was stolen, through others. In the late 70s, panic spread quickly, not just because of the terrifying imagery, but because of how real it all felt. People swore they'd seen her. Parents began escorting children in groups. Some schools even hired additional security guards. News channels tried to debunk the legend, but instead ended up fueling the fear by discussing it nightly. One chilling story came from a teacher in Kyoto. She said one of her students, an 11-year-old girl, began acting strangely after seeing a woman on her way home. The next day, the girl wouldn't speak. When asked what happened, she whispered, "She asked me if she was pretty. I said no because she had red eyes. The girl disappeared that night. Her shoes were found near a storm drain. What made the story worse was that there was no safe answer to the question. If you said yes, she'd still slash your face. If you said no, she'd kill you. People began looking for less ways to escape. Some said if you distracted her by saying, "You're average," she would become confused, giving you time to run. Others claimed if you threw hard candies, especially bekoame, a type of traditional Japanese sweet, she'd stop to pick them up because in her human life, she loved sweets. Still, there was no guarantee. One taxi driver recounted a strange incident on a foggy evening in 1981. He picked up a quiet woman wearing a mask near the outskirts of town. She barely spoke during the ride. When he looked in the rearview mirror, she was gone. The back door hadn't opened, but on the backseat a rusted scissors lay beside a single hard candy. Some believe that the rise of the Kuchisake-Onna legend was a mirror of society's fear. In the 1970s, Japan was rapidly urbanizing. The traditional safety of small communities gave way to anonymous cities, where strangers passed by without speaking. A masked woman with a terrifying secret felt like a perfect metaphor. Beauty hiding horror, politeness concealing rage. But others they believed she was real. One old man, a retired policeman from Fukuoka, claimed on his deathbed that he once chased someone through an alleyway in 1978. After reports of an assault, he never caught up to the figure. But he remembered this clearly. She wasn't running. Her feet never touched the ground. He said her hair blew in a direction opposite the wind. So many versions exist. Some say she appears only on rainy nights. Others believe she was killed during surgery, and the mask represents her soul stuck in that moment of pain. There are even stories of a woman doctor in the 2000s who was arrested after being mistaken for Kuchisake-Onna had mental illness and had been seen stalking children with scissors. But even now, the legend continues. Teenagers on TikTok reenact her question. Horror games are made about her. Movies have portrayed her, but none seem to match the chilling fear of hearing that voice in real life. In a silent alleyway where streetlights flicker and shadows seem to move on their own. Because when night falls in Japan and the wind whistles down the narrow streets, sometimes people still hear it. Do you think I'm pretty? And if they answer wrong, if they hesitate even for a second, she might not let them answer again. She asked, "Am I pretty?" And the children always answered wrong. There's a reason people say children see more than adults. Not just ghosts or shadows or things in mirrors, but the fear behind smiles, the tension and silence, the kind of wrong that can't be explained, only felt. In the case of Kuchisake-Onna, it wasn't just adults who were haunted. It was the children, young, innocent, walking home from cram school with heavy backpacks and swinging keychains who first reported the terrifying encounters. At first, no one believed them. "It's just a prank," one parent told the news, brushing her daughter's tears away. But when the second child disappeared from the same neighborhood, living behind only her umbrella and a single red shoe, people started to listen. The police called them missing person cases. The media hinted at kidnappings, but the children knew what it really was. "She asked me if she was pretty," whispered a third grader, eyes wide, voice trembling. "I said yes." "And then what happened?" a teacher asked gently. She smiled, but her smile went all the way up here. The girl motioned to her cheeks, slicing her finger from the corner of her mouth toward her ear. She took off her mask. She was angry. The question was always the same. "Do you think I'm pretty?" And no matter what the children answered, it always ended in horror. Those who said yes hoped it was the right thing to say. After all, being kind never hurt, right? Wrong. The moment they agreed, the woman would slowly peel off her surgical mask. Her mouth would split open into a bloody grin, like someone had taken a knife and carved her from lip to ear on both sides. Torn flesh, exposed teeth, dried blood. Then she'd ask again. Even now, the brave ones still said yes, shaking, sweating, praying it would save them. It never did. According to stories whispered in classrooms and bedrooms, that's when she'd bring out the rusty scissors hidden in her coat and say, "Then I'll make you look just like me." Others, terrified by her first question, said no. That was worse. She'd grow enraged. Her voice would drop into something not quite human. Her feet wouldn't move, but she'd be standing closer. The scissors would gleam. The streetlight above would flicker out. And then screams, followed by silence. In every case, there was no right answer. Some tried to run, but they said she was faster than a shadow. One boy from Sapporo claimed he escaped by cutting through an alley too narrow for adults. He said he could feel her breath on his neck, smell something like old iron and rotting flowers. She wasn't running, he said, but she was just there, every time I turned. In those days, many children began carrying charms, salt packets, red string, even candy. Word spread that she had a weakness for Beko aim, traditional Japanese sugar candy, supposedly. If you threw candy on the ground, she'd pause just long enough for you to run. One girl even said she answered, "You're average," and that the ghost froze, tilting her head in confusion before vanishing into mist. But it didn't always work, because Kuchisake-Onna wasn't a logic puzzle. She wasn't a spirit you could outsmart. She was emotion. She was vengeance. She was whatever answer you didn't give you, and she punished you for it. A retired teacher named Mrs. Kawaguchi, now in her 70s, once told a radio show about the worst month of her career, November 1979. Her school, a modest building on the edge of town, had reported 3 disappearances in 2 weeks. Every child missing had last been seen walking home through the same road, Sakura Alley, a path shaded by tall cherry trees. It was quiet, she recalled, beautiful in spring, but in the fall when the trees were bare, the branches looked like claws. She remembers the last student vividly, a shy boy named Akio. He stayed after class to clean the chalkboard. He had no siblings, no one to walk home with. They found his school bag 3 days later, abandoned beneath a cherry tree. Stuffed inside was a surgical mask. The media began to stir again. Reporters camped outside the school gates. Interviews with experts aired on television, some calling it mass hysteria, others blaming an unidentified attacker. But the children kept repeating the same thing. She asked the question, and everyone answered wrong. One night, 2 boys from Osaka decided to test the legend. Armed with a flashlight, a camera, and too much courage for their age, they waited in the alley where Kuchisake-Onna was said to appear. At 10:47 p.m., the younger boy heard soft footsteps, not quite on gravel, not quite on the ground. When he turned, she was standing just behind them. Long coat, mask, still. "Do you think I'm pretty?" The older boy screamed yes, before she finished the sentence. She took off her mask. Her mouth split in a red grin. Even now, the younger boy, shaking, stammered, "You're your average." She tilted her head. She blinked, then vanished. They never saw her again. But the camera footage was damaged. No image, no sound. Only a low hiss like breathing. Some began to wonder if belief gave her power. That by speaking of her, fearing her, telling her story, you summoned her, made her stronger. The more the children talked, the more sightings spread. From Gifu to Kyoto, from Osaka to Hokkaido, even in Tokyo. One teacher wrote in his journal, "It's like she's following the stories, as if each telling brings her closer. Even now, decades later, people report sightings. A woman waiting at a bus stop till late at night. A figure following behind you, never overtaking, but never falling back. A soft voice under your breath. Do you think I'm pretty? Some kids still wear charms. Some still run in groups. And some don't talk about her at all. Because the story is still alive. And so is she. Psychologists today try to explain Kuchisake-Onna as a product of fear. During Japan's rapid modernization, a symbol of anxiety over appearances, gender roles, or urban isolation. But others think differently. They say some places carry emotions like stains, regret so strong it claws its way out of death. If Kuchisake-Onna was real once, then she is still real now, trapped between two questions, always asking, always wronged, and always waiting. So if you ever find yourself walking alone at night and you hear someone behind you, whispering that question, do you think I'm pretty? Walk faster, don't look, don't speak, because there is no right answer. And she's tired of being lied to. Who dared say no? They never spoke again. They say fear has many faces, but silence is its loudest voice. And in the tale of Kuchisake-Onna, the most terrifying fate didn't belong to those who ran, or even those who answered yes. It belonged to the ones who dared say no, because they were never able to speak again. The first recorded cassette, at least the one that made the papers, was of a 12-year-old boy named Kenji. It was early winter, 1979, in the outskirts of Fukuoka. He was known to be skeptical, brave, some even said reckless, the kind of boy who laughed at ghost stories and dared his classmates to spend a night alone in the gym storage shed. One evening, as the sun slipped behind the hills and the shadows grew longer, Kenji was walking home alone. He had refused to wait for his classmates. He said ghosts weren't real. That was the last time anyone saw him speak. His mother found him the next morning, huddled on the front porch, knees tucked to his chest. His eyes were wide open, frozen in terror. His lips torn open, sliced from corner to corner. Blood had dried along his cheeks, but there was no scream, no word, just silence. Doctors stitched his wounds. Physically, he survived, but mentally something had been taken. He never spoke again. Soon, more stories followed. The patterns were the same. Young people, mostly children or teenagers, found alone after dark, often near alleys, quiet roads, or schoolyards. When asked what happened, they couldn't answer. They either had no mouths left to speak or were too broken to try. A school counselor from Nagoya reported a strange incident with one of her students, 14-year-old Minna. She had always been quiet, but on a rainy Friday, she returned from school looking pale and disoriented. Her lips trembled as if trying to speak, but no words came out. Her parents noticed her mask was soaked not from the rain but with blood. At the hospital, doctors confirmed what they called a self-inflicted injury, though no sharp objects were ever found. Her mouth had been cut open, from ear to ear. When asked by police what had happened, she wrote only one word on a piece of paper: no. Legends quickly formed around this response. The word no, it seemed, wasn't just a denial. It was a challenge to the ghost, a rejection of her appearance, her pain, her memory. And she did not take it kindly. They say Kuchisake-Onna punishes those who deny her beauty, but not because she wants to be a Deredno. It's something deeper, something twisted. Some believe she's trapped in the moment of her death. Moment her face was disfigured, her pride shattered, her identity erased. And when someone says no, they're not just calling her ugly, they're reminding her of how she died. A retired folklorist named Mr. Sato once gave a public lecture about urban legends. and their cultural roots. He discussed Kuchisake-Onna in detail, showing images and newspaper clippings from the 1970s. But what made the audience freeze was when he played a voicemail recording emitting a student of his claimed to have captured. The audio was distorted, filled with static, but beneath the noise, a woman's voice could be heard, whispering, "Am I ugly?" Then another voice, barely audible, replied, "No." The recording ended with a long, shrill metallic sound. Some said it sounded like scissors. Others believed it was a scream, one so loud it couldn't be heard. There's one infamous story from Saitama Prefecture. It's rarely told, most who know it prefer to forget. In 1982, a middle school boy named Tatsuya was dared by his classmates to walk alone through the shrine path behind their school, a place rumored to be haunted. They didn't expect him to accept, but he did. He left at 6:30 p.m. He didn't come back. His parents and teachers searched all night. The next morning, he was found sitting inside the school's lost and found room, alone, his face hidden under a jacket. When the teacher pulled the jacket off, they screamed. His mouth was gone. Not just cut, gone. Sealed over like skin had been stitched from cheek to cheek. He never made a sound again. People began whispering that saying no wasn't just dangerous, it was fatal. The government never acknowledged the incidents as supernatural. But quietly, schools began printing safety guides warning students not to walk alone, to avoid speaking with strangers, and to ignore anyone who asked strange personal questions. Some teachers even taught students what to say if approached. "I'm sorry, I'm in a hurry. I don't know. My mom's waiting." But the legend grew smarter. Children reported that Kuchisake-Onna would block their way, moving unnaturally fast to stand in front of them. Some said she could even mimic the voice of a loved one to make them stop. And once she asked the question, "Do you think I'm pretty?" there was no escape. The horror spread into adulthood, too. One taxi driver in Tokyo recalled picking up a woman late at night from a dark corner near a hospital. She wore a long coat and a mask. Nothing strange until she leaned forward and asked, "Do you think I'm pretty?" The driver, not knowing the legend, laughed awkwardly and said, "Not really." Seconds later, she was gone, vanished from the back seat. His rearview mirror cracked, and for weeks afterward, the driver complained of seeing a smiling face reflected every time he looked into glass. Eventually, he quit his job. Even more chilling is the connection between the victims. Most of them weren't just unlucky strangers. Many had something in common: arrogance, cruelty, or vanity. Kids who bullied others, teens who judged people by looks, adults who mocked scars or deformities. It's as if saying no wasn't just a wrong answer, it was an invitation to judgment. And Kuchisake-Onna, once judged so cruelly herself, became the executioner. A twisted mirror, a punishment. One woman, a nurse named Ayumi, believes she narrowly escaped death. Late one night, walking home from her shift, she was approached by a tall woman near the train tracks. "Do you think I'm pretty?" Ayumi's first instinct was to run, but her legs froze. Something in the woman's eyes, sadness, pain, rage, held her still. She answered, "I'm sorry, I can't see clearly." The woman paused, then vanished into thin air. Ayumi later said she didn't lie. She genuinely couldn't see well in the dark. But she also admitted that, in that moment, she remembered the hospital patient who died during a failed cosmetic surgery. A woman who had screamed, "Don't let them see my face." Was that the same woman? Was that where it all began? Some legends now say Kuchisake-Onna isn't bound to alleys or nights or even Japan. She travels with the story. Wherever someone speaks of her, thinks of her, or tells the Telesh draws closer. And she still asks the same question. Because she needs to. Because she wants someone just 1% see beyond the scars. But if you say no, she'll make sure you can never say anything again. So next time you walk alone in the fading light, and a soft voice floats up from behind asking, "Do you think I'm pretty?" Think carefully, because those who said no don't have mouths to warn you anymore. The mask hides the truth, but her eyes still bleed. If you ever meet Kuchisake-Onna face to face, don't look only at her mouth, because her ice toes hollow, bleeding ice will haunt you forever. The legend has always centered on the terrible wound stretching from ear to ear, a grotesque grin that no one could forget. But few dared to describe the rest of her face, or the chilling details that make her presence so unforgettable. For decades, eyewitnesses have shared what they saw, what they felt, and what made them never want to speak of it again. Most accounts agree, she wears a surgical mask, the kind many in Japan use when sick or avoiding pollution. It covers her face, concealing the horrifying slit that scars her cheeks and lips. But behind that mask the truth is far worse than anyone imagined. Some witnesses described seeing a pale, ghostly skin so white and thin it almost looked translucent, as if light passed right through. Others said the skin appeared stretched tight over sharp cheekbones, making her face look like a skull. Her hair, always jet black, long and straight, falling in damp strands that stuck to her face like wet ink. It framed her expressionless countenance, making her seem almost like a living doll if dolls could scream. But what terrified people the most wasn't her mouth, it was her eyes. Multiple people who encountered Kuchisake-Onna up close spoke of her eyes bleeding slowly, not with fresh blood, but a dark, almost blackish red liquid, trickling down her pale cheeks like tears. Some who dared to stare into her eyes described the sensation, as if their souls were being pulled out through those tears, like staring into a bottomless abyss, filled with pain and rage. One man who claimed to have survived an encounter told a reporter, "I saw her eyes drip like red oil. At first, I thought it was a trick of the streetlights, but when I wiped my own cheek, there was nothing." Her gaze is said to be utterly devoid of mercy, cold, unblinking, unforgiving. Some believe her eyes reflect the intense hatred and sorrow she carries from the moment. Her face was mutilated and eternal, wound deeper than the physical. It's no surprise then that when she asks her dreadful question, the very air around her chills. Many witnesses say the temperature drops, suddenly breath turns to mist. The world seems to slow. One teenager from Kyoto described the moment she appeared behind him on a narrow street. "I was walking home, headphones in, when I felt something behind me. I took off one earbud and turned slightly. She was there, standing perfectly still, with that mask on. Her eyes, they were bleeding. It was like she was crying blood." He froze, unable to move or scream. Then she whispered, "Am I pretty?" I couldn't answer. Another account comes from a night guard at a parking lot in Osaka. He was patrolling late when he saw a figure standing motionless near a vending machine. The street light flickered, and for a moment I saw her face without the mask, that slit, the blood. But those eyes, they were the worst. They were open wide, bleeding like they were screaming. The guard ran. Despite the terrifying appearance, there's something almost tragic in the way witnesses describe her. Not all see her as a pure monster. Some say her eyes tell a story of betrayal, pain, and endless suffering. The mask itself, they say, is a fragile shield, a way to hide her shame, a way to protect the world from the horror beneath, but also a way to protect herself from being rejected again. The truth behind the mask varies by story. Some say she once was a beautiful woman, full of life and laughter, who was cruelly attacked. Others say she was a victim of jealousy, a husband's rage, a lover's betrayal. And some believe she was a woman who suffered through failed cosmetic surgery, left disfigured and abandoned. One chilling tale from a rural village recounts how a local man once tried to remove her mask. With his bare hands, desperate to see if the rumors were true. He had heard the stories, was curious, or perhaps foolish. When the mask slipped, he saw not only the gruesome smile, but the eyes deep red, leaking blood like tears. The man screamed, falling to the ground, and was never the same again. The mask's significance goes beyond mere disguise. It symbolizes the duality of her existence between the woman she once was and the monster she became, between pain and rage, between humanity and vengeance. Her eyes bleed because her soul bleeds. They are windows into the torment she carries every moment. They are warnings. Many who have seen her eyes swear they can feel her sorrow, her despair. Some even whisper that if you look long enough, you might hear her silent plea, an unspoken question beyond "Am I pretty?" A question that asks, "Will you see me as I once was?" Few survive such encounters without being marked, not physically, but mentally. The image of bleeding eyes, the cracked smile hidden by a fragile mask, these haunt the minds of those who see them. Even years later, they wake up in the dark, feeling watched. It's said that her eyes will appear even if the mask is never removed. Like an evil shadow, her sorrow and rage seep through the thin cloth, burning into the minds of those nearby. In a famous urban legend retold by a Tokyo journalist, a woman who had worked in cosmetic surgery told a story of a patient who disappeared from the hospital bed. The woman was found later, wandering the streets at night, wearing a surgical mask and looking lost. Her eyes were bleeding. She never spoke again. This story added to the fear that Kuchisake-Onna might be the restless spirit of a woman who suffered in silence, her agony trapped beneath that mask. It's this tragedy combined with terror that gives Kuchisake-Onna her terrifying power. She's not just a monster. She's a wounded soul crying bloody tears. So if you ever walk alone at night and see a woman with a surgical mask and dark, dripping eyes, don't look away, but don't stare too long, because those eyes see more than you think, and they will never forget. Why does she only appear at night, and why does she always follow children? Darkness has always been a playground for fear, for spirits, for shadows, and for Kuchisake-Onna. Why does this ghostly woman only come out when the sun sets? Why are children her preferred targets? These questions have haunted people for decades, just like the ghost herself. From the earliest whispers of the legend in the 1970s, one fact was clear: she hunts at night. Children and teenagers who reported encounters all said the Samoth ghost was nowhere to be found. During the day, she only roams narrow streets and alleys when the sky is black, when the city sleeps, and when the moon hides behind clouds. There are many reasons why spirits like Kuchisake-Onna appear at night. The simplest explanation is that nighttime brings stillness and silence, perfect for a spirit who feeds on fear and confusion. In daylight, the world is full of noise, movement, and people. At night, shadows grow longer, sight fades, the mind plays tricks. A surgical mask, a pale face, and bleeding eyes in the dark become something far more terrifying. But beyond the practical, there is something deeper. Many believe that Kuchisake-Onna is a lost soul, trapped between worlds, bound by the time when she died. If the stories are true, she died violently, her mouth cruelly slashed. Her death happened in the dark, so her spirit is drawn to the darkness, a place where she is closest to the moment of her own pain. Some folklorists explain that many unrevengeful spirits in Japanese mythology are strongest at night. This is because the boundary between the living and the dead thins in the darkness. At night, emotions and memories are more intense. Grief, rage, and sorrow can leak through into the world of the living. In the case of Kuchisake-Onna, the night amplifies her anger and loneliness. She is said to roam the streets under the cover of darkness, searching for someone to share her pain, or perhaps to pass it on. Why children? One of the most disturbing parts of the legend is why she often targets children. Why do kids seem to see her more than adults? Why do they bear the brunt of her wrath? The most common explanation is that children are more vulnerable. They walk home alone or in small groups. They carry backpacks, chatter nervously, or hurry along narrow paths. At night, they are easier to scare and harder to defend themselves. Children's fear is said to be like a fuel for Kuchisake-Onna. Their screams, confusion, and panic feed her power. Many reports show that she approaches children precisely because they are more likely to answer her deadly question. Another theory comes from the symbolic world of folklore. Children represent innocence and purity. By targeting children, Kuchisake-Onna inflicts a deeper wound not just physically but spiritually. Her attacks serve as a reminder that even innocence can be corrupted by pain and cruelty. In some stories, she is believed to be seeking a replacement. Her mutilated mouth and lost identity make her desperate to find someone to take on her curse. Children, being unformed and impressionable, are seen as the easiest vessels. This also explains why children often try to walk in groups or carry charms for protection. They instinctively know they are targets. Some families tell stories of children refusing to walk home alone after sunset, fearing the silent woman behind the mask. From a psychological angle, some experts believe the legend taps into real fears of children growing up in rapidly changing cities. The 1970s Japan was a time of urban expansion, and traditional close-knit communities began breaking apart. Children who once walked safely in the streets now faced strangers and traffic. Kuchisake-Onna became a personification of the anxiety and dangers of modern life. Her hunting grounds. Eyewitnesses place her mostly in narrow alleys, quiet streets, schoolyards, and near train stations. These places are where children often walk alone or in small groups. The ghost seems to stalk places where shadows are thick and light is scarce, where escape is difficult. Many children describe feeling a slow, unnatural silence around her. No birds chirping, no distant cars, just the sound of her footsteps, soft, deliberate. She doesn't run or chase like a normal person. Her movements are said to be unnerving, gliding, floating, or shifting like a shadow. Sometimes she disappears and reappears without warning. Several people report that she appears at the exact same locations repeatedly. One small school in Nagoya closed down after multiple reports of children seeing a masked woman at dusk. The playground was left empty. Time and ritual. The time she appears also holds significance. Many reports say she appears right after sunset, until midnight, and then vanishes. Some say she is strongest at the witching hour, midnight, when the veil between worlds is thinnest. In some versions, her appearance is linked to the full moon. When the moon is bright and round, her powers grow. Other tales say she prefers rainy or foggy nights, where visibility is low and fear rises. In all versions, her question remains the same: a ritualistic test for her victims. Her terrifying smile and question are a curse wrapped in a trap. Answer yes and she kills. Answer no and she kills. Answer something else and you might live. Why does she keep asking? If she's a lost spirit, why does she keep asking if she's pretty? Some say she is trapped in her last moments of life, forever seeking validation. Her mouth was torn because of jealousy and rage. So she asks about beauty to confirm she still exists. Others believe she is testing her victims to see if they see beyond her scars. But no answer can truly satisfy her. She is an embodiment of pain and rejection. No matter how someone answers, it leads to tragedy. Modern sightings and impact. Even today, stories of Kuchisake-Onna appear from various parts of Japan. Social media groups discuss sightings. Horror movies retell her story with new twists. Parents still warn children about walking alone. Some schools hold assemblies to talk about urban legends and safety. Though skeptics dismiss the stories, the fear is real for many. The story of Kuchisake-Onna reminds us how fear adapts and survives. A spirit born from pain, hunting in the night, targeting the vulnerable. As long as the night falls, she will keep asking, "Do you think I'm pretty?" And the children, innocent and unprepared, will keep hearing her voice behind them. Why she only appears at night and always follows children. They say ghosts follow patterns. That spirits trapped between this world and the next are bound by certain rules, some shaped by the trauma of their death, others by the obsession they carried in life. And with Kuchisake-Onna, the patterns are chillingly precise. It's no longer just about her terrifying appearance or her blood-soaked smelino. The more disturbing truth lies in how, when, and who she chooses to haunt. The urban legend of the slit-mouthed woman, as she is called in the West, has always been cloaked in whispers. But when survivor Cecily children began sharing eerily similar experiences, a disturbing picture began to emerge, a pattern that was impossible to ignore. Why night? Eyewitnesses across Japan report the same thing. Kuchisake-Onna only ever appears at night, never during the day, not at dusk, not at dawn. Always after the sun has disappeared completely behind the horizon. But why? Some spiritual researchers believe it has less to do with superstition and more with her energetic attachment to darkness. According to old on-muter beliefs, Japanese esoteric cosmology, certain vengeful spirits, especially those who died in anguish, are yurei. These entities are often bound by the emotional conditions of their death. Kuchisake-Onna is believed to have died during a betrayal, some say, at the hands of a jealous lover. Others believe she was mutilated by a sadistic husband who thought she was cheating on him. The violence, humiliation, and pain etched into her soul may have tethered her spirit to the night when her shame and fury feel most powerful. Night also offers her cover. Darkness hides the grotesque slit across her face. It hides the blood that drips from her lips. It gives her time to stalk, to wander aimlessly down alleyways or behind school buildings, waiting for someone who is alone, someone small, someone vulnerable. Why children? Here lies the heart of the most unsettling part of the legend. At first, people thought she simply attacked random pedestrians, but over time, a sinister pattern became clear. Kuchisake-Onna prefers children, not toddlers or infants, but children old enough to understand fear and young enough to believe what they see. Many of the reported sightings came from kids walking home from cram school, late-night club activities, or sneaking out with friends. Some were alone, others in pairs. And the strange thing, adults nearby never noticed her. One chilling case from 1998 involved a group of boys in Aichi Prefecture. They were walking home after dark when a woman in a beige coat and surgical mask approached them. One of the boys said she moved stiffly, as if her joints were broken. She asked in a whisper, "Am I pretty?" The boys laughed nervously, but when she removed the mask, revealing a gaping, bloodied grin that stretched from ear to ear, they screamed and ran. One boy tripped and wasn't found until 2 days later, hiding under a bridge. He was safe, physically, But his mind, broken, he never spoke again. A pattern was forming. She didn't chase adults. She didn't appear in well-lit places. She didn't scream or shout. She lured. She waited. And she followed desperately when a child wandered just a bit too far from their group. The hunting grounds. It's not just when she appears but where. Over the decades, hundreds of alleged sightings have been mapped across Japan. What's eerie is the clustering. She's frequently spotted near abandoned schools, along quiet alleyways in residential areas, behind convenience stores where children buy snacks after dark, on lonely forest paths between villages. She tends to avoid areas with heavy foot traffic. No train stations, no downtown streets. It's as if she knows where the gaps or the cracks in the social fabric, where a child might slip away unnoticed. In 2004, a paranormal research group in Gifu set up hidden night vision cameras around a rural elementary school that had been shut down for renovation. Local children kept reporting sightings of a woman in a red coat watching them from behind the fence. The cameras didn't capture much until 3:11 a.m. one night. A figure appeared. Slender, long black hair, her face hidden behind a white mask. She stood perfectly still for over 6 minutes, then vanished with taking a single step. No footprints were found in the freshly fallen snow. The voice that calls. Multiple witnesses describe hearing the same voice before seeing her. A slow, echoing whisper that seems to float just behind your ear. Am I pretty? But here's what many don't know. If the person being followed is a child, she changes the question. She says, "Do you want to play with me?" That's right, not a question of beauty, not a threat, a game. It's as if she mimics what a child wants to hear. Some researchers believe this is how she lures them into a false sense of safety. Children, being naturally curious and less skeptical, are more likely to interact. And once they say yes, that's when she shows her true face. Why she can't be seen by adults always. It may sound ridiculous, but many children who report encounters say the adults near them saw nothing. In fact, several cases involve teachers or parents who swear they saw their child turn a corner only for the child to vanish moments later. One spiritual medium suggested that this is due to Kuchisake-Onna's emotional frequency. She vibrates at a level closer to that of children's perception. In spiritual theory, kids are more open. Their minds haven't yet closed off to the unseen. That makes them easier to connect with. Another theory is darker. Some believe Kuchisake-Onna sees herself in children. Maybe she had her innocence stolen young. Maybe she was once a child who cried out and was never heard. So now, in death, she stalks the very phase of life she never got to finish. The rules of her hunt, much like the classic urban legends of vampires needing an invitation, or ghosts being bound to cursed objects, Kuchisake-Onna seems to have rules. Based on multiple stories, paranormalists have compiled a rough list of hunting behaviors. She never enters brightly lit areas. She only follows after a child makes eye contact. She vanishes if you throw candy or money behind you. This is believed to distract her temporarily. She walks slowly but never seems to fall behind. If a child answers her question wrong, she attacks. But even the right answer doesn't guarantee safety. The most disturbing rule: once a child has seen her face, even just on Sethi may see her again. And again, in dreams, in reflections, in windows, until one day she follows them home. Real case, the missing girl in Hokkaido. In 2012, a 9-year-old girl named Mizuki went missing in Hokkaido. Her parents said she had just returned from cram school, walking the same route she always did. There were no signs of struggle, no clues except for one chilling detail. Two boys from her class said they saw her stop at the corner near the vending machines. She was talking to a lady with a mask. One of them said, the lady had shiny eyes. Police found no trace of this woman. But that corner? Locals say it's a hot spot for strange things, electrical outages, shadows that don't belong, and a coldness that settles even in summer. Mizuki was never found. Final thoughts, a spirit of grief, not just horror. While Kuchisake-Onna has become a horror icon, beneath the terror lies a question no one dares ask. What if she doesn't want to hurt them? What if her twisted spirit is trying to warn us to pay attention to the vulnerable, to listen when children say they see someone, to not ignore the cries of those we think are just imagining things? Maybe the tragedy of Kuchisake-Onna is not just the slit smile, but that she was once a girl, calling for help, and no one came. The school in panic, students had to walk in groups. Real accounts from Japan during 1979-1980, when children had to be escorted to school due to fear of a female ghost. In the quiet suburbs of Sujinami Ward, Tokyo, during the late 1970s, a chilling fear swept through the hearts of parents, teachers, and especially young children. It began as whisper rumors in the narrow alleyways between wooden houses, in hushed voices over tea, and in the trembling confessions of children too afraid to sleep. They said there was a ghost, a woman, dressed in white, with no face. She waited outside school gates. She appeared near bathroom windows, and worst of all, she followed children, but only when they were alone. What began as a disturbing urban legend quickly grew into national concern. Between 1979 and 1980, several elementary schools in Tokyo's western districts reported what officials described only as mass hysteria. But for the families who lived through it, there was nothing imaginary about the terror. The first sighting, it started at Kinji Elementary, one chilly October morning in 1979. A third-grade student named Haruka came running back home, screaming. Her mother, initially thinking she had been attacked by a stranger, couldn't calm her down for hours. All Haruka could repeat was, "She doesn't have a face. She called my name without a mouth." According to Haruka, she had been walking to school early to practice for a choral recital. The streets were mostly empty, except for the soft sound of leaves skittering across the pavement. At the turn of the alley leading to her school, she saw a woman standing perfectly still under a flickering street lamp. The woman wore a long white kimono, her hair soaking wet and hanging over her shoulders. Her hands were pale and motionless at her sides, but it was her faceno, the absence of it, that haunted Haruka. Where a face should have been, there was only a smooth stretch of skin. No eyes, no mouth, just an empty expression that somehow still stared. And then it whispered her name. The spread of panic. Within 2 weeks, more children from the same school reported seeing the faceless woman. Their stories were eerily consistent. The figure always appeared between 6 o'clock and 7 a.m., usually near alleys, playgrounds, or corners of old school buildings. Sometimes she simply stood there. Sometimes she followed, never running, never blinking, just following. Parents demanded answers. Teachers tried to calm the students, but the stories kept piling up. Children refused to go to school alone. Many began wetting the bed or waking up screaming. One boy, Hiroshi, locked himself in the closet after claiming the lady climbed into his classroom window. During lunch break, the local Board of Education, under pressure, issued an unprecedented suggestion. All students should travel to and from school in groups. Whenever possible, a parent or teacher was to escort them. A ghost story rooted in tragedy, Japanese folklore has long warned of unrevengeful spirits, often women who died with deep sorrow or rage. According to a retired school janitor interviewed in 1983, the area where Kanji Elementary stood used to be home to a mental health asylum. During the pre-war era, he recalled, there was a woman they brought in. She had drowned her own child in the Kanda River. They said she used to scream every night, asking where her baby went. Some nights, she would call out random childish names like she was looking for her child in the afterlife. After the war, the asylum was demolished, but strange occurrences were reportedly common even before the 1979 panic. Teachers sometimes heard tapping on classroom windows from the third-floor windows that had no ledge. Night guards would hear footsteps in locked corridors. One art teacher allegedly saw a woman's reflection in a mirror, though no one stood beside her. But in 1979, the fear truly erupted. It was no longer just an eerie feeling, it was personal. Children felt hunted. The government's involvement. By early 1980, reports of the faceless woman spread to nearby districts Mitaka, Ogakubo, even parts of Setagaya. Local media began reporting on the panic, though they were careful to label it as psychological distress or school anxiety. Still, the effect was undeniable. Police increased patrols near schools. Religious leaders were quietly invited to perform purification rituals. Buddhist monks chanted at school gates. Shinto priests buried protective charms under trees where sightings were common. One parent group from Mitaka even hired a medium from Hiroshima, a well-known Maiko who claimed to see spiritual residue. Her verdict: she's looking for someone, a child who died alone, until she finds the right one. She will continue calling random names. It is why she only appears to children. Only they can still hear her sorrow. School bathrooms and the mirror theory. A particularly strange phenomenon reported during this time involved school bathrooms specifically, the mirrors inside them. In multiple schools, students claimed that if you entered the girls' bathroom on the third floor, stood alone, and looked into the mirror for 10 seconds without blinking, you would see the faceless woman appear behind you. It became such a widespread dare that schools began removing bathroom mirrors or installing curtains to block reflections. A teacher from Sujinami recounted, I walked into the restroom once and saw 4 girls standing in front of the mirror, crying. They all swore they saw her in the reflection. But when I looked, nothing was there. Still, their fear was real. Their bodies were shaking. Why did she target children? According to modern paranormal researchers, spirits like these are often drawn to innocence or emotional vulnerability. Children, with their vivid imagination and open senses, are more likely to perceive entities that adults cannot. But in this case, it wasn't just passive observation. The faceless woman chose to approach children alone, isolated, and usually near water sources or metal structures. Psychics noted these as spirit-conductive materials, enhancing a ghost's power to manifest. More disturbingly, a psychologist in Tokyo suggested that the spirit might be trying to replace the child she lost. Hence, why she followed them, why she whispered their names, and why some children never came back. Yes, there were unconfirmed cases during this timid disappearances that police ruled as runaways. But parents insisted otherwise. Their children were happy. Well-adjusted until the sightings began. One case involved a 10-year-old girl named Megumi. She vanished while walking home alone after missing her group. Her last words to a friend were, I think she knows my name now. She was outside my classroom today. Megumi was never found. Legacy and lingering fears. By 1981, the panic faded. No more sightings were reported. Children slowly returned to normal routines, but the trauma lingered. Today, those who lived through that time still recall it with unease. Some refuse to talk about it. Others simply say, "It was something we all went through. It changed us." Interestingly, during a school renovation in 2007 at Kanji Elementary, construction workers uncovered something buried beneath the old gymnasiumal bones. Possibly animal, but arranged in a ritualistic pattern. Some believe it was part of an ancient curse. Others dismiss it. Still, no one explains why the temperature in that area often drops several degrees lower than the rest of the building. Final thoughts. Was it mass hysteria, a collective imagination sparked by childhood fear? Or did something truly paranormal stalk the children of Tokyo in those years? To this day, urban legends in Japan include the faceless woman near school gates. Stories continue to surface quietly, cautiously from adults who were once those terrified children. They still remember the whispers, the heavy presence, the footsteps that stopped when they turned around, and that horrible, blank face that seemed to know their name. Whatever she was, she chose the night, she chose the innocent, and for a time, she turned peaceful school corridors into a waking nightmare. Someone survived by distracting her. The ancient tricks to escape Kuchisake-Onna's deadly question. They say no one survives once she appears. The woman with the slit mouth. The ghost who asks one question and kills you either way. Yet, over the years, whispered stories began to surface. Someone had escaped, not by outrunning her, not by hiding, but by outsmarting her. Let's go back to the core of this terrifying urban legend. Kuchisake-Onna doesn't chase after everyone randomly. She appears mostly at night, usually when a person, often a child, is walking alone. Her long coat conceals most of her body, and she wears a surgical mask, making her seem just like any other passerby in Japan's urban streets. But then comes the question in her soft, whispery voice. Am I beautiful? Answering this question wrongly is a death sentence. But what's terrifying is that even the right answer might not save you. The deadly logic of her question. Let's revisit what happens when you answer. If you say no, she immediately pulls out a blade, usually a long pair of scissors or a knife, and kills you on the spot. If you say yes, she removes her mask to reveal the horrific slit that stretches from ear to ear, exposing her mutilated mouth. Then she asks again. Even now, if you scream, run, or say no, she kills you. If you say yes again, she gives you a grin, then slashes your mouth to look like hers. It's a lose-lose situation. But legends always have their loopholes. Over time, people began spreading rumors of survivors who answered in just the right way, or used clever tricks to delay or confuse her. These stories became almost like folk recipes, passed from mouth to mouth, parent to child, student to student, and surprisingly, many of these so-called survival tips are consistent across different regions in Japan. Let's explore some of the most well-known ones. Say so-so or average. The most commonly mentioned method is to answer her first question with a neutral reply. You're average. So-so. I don't know. This reportedly causes her to pause, confused. The logic is this: ghosts and spirits in Japanese folklore often follow rigid rules, or are caught in emotional cycles. By refusing to give a definitive yes or no, the victim breaks the pattern. It's said that this confusion buys you just enough time to escape, or causes her to vanish completely, as if the curse didn't know how to respond. There's a chilling account from 1981 in the outskirts of Kyoto, where a 10-year-old girl was walking home and encountered a masked woman. The girl, taught by her grandmother, replied, "You look normal." The woman reportedly tilted her head, stood silently for a moment, and then disappeared into thin air. Throw candy or fruit. Another popular folk method. Throw beko-ame, a type of Japanese hard candy, or pieces of fruit, like a tangerine or apple. The belief stems from the idea that evil spirits can be distracted by sweet things. In old Japanese ghost stories, spirits are often portrayed as having leftover human desires. Some legends claim that Kuchisake-Onna, in her former life, had a love for sweet candy, especially caramelized sugar. By throwing candy, especially into a direction away from yourself, she is said to turn and follow the treat. This creates a moment for the victim to run away. Teachers in some parts of Nagasaki during the early 80s reportedly gave students small pouches with wrapped candies just in case. Though this might sound more like a way to calm frightened kids, the belief was deeply ingrained enough that even local shop owners started keeping small bowls of sweets at the entrance. Ask her a question. Another clever trick that's whispered across many schoolyards. Answer her question with a question. Do you think I'm beautiful? Am I beautiful to you? Why do you want to know? By doing this, the logic goes, you confuse the ghost's programming. Supernatural entities like her are often bound by strict behavioral loops. When the victim disrupts that loop, the spirit stalls. It doesn't kill her, but it breaks the rhythm, and that rhythm is her power. A now famous story came from a boy in Saitama who allegedly replied, "Are you beautiful to yourself?" According to the rumor, the woman stared at him silently, lowered her head, and walked away. Use pomade. This one might sound absurd at first until you understand the origin. In some older tales, it's said that Kuchisake-Onna was mutilated by her jealous husband, who was a barber or worked with cosmetics. He used pomade, a strongly scented hair product. For reasons unknown, the smell of pomade is believed to repel her. Some say it reminds her of the man who hurt her. Others believe it simply causes her spiritual form pain. In the late 1970s, school children were told to carry small pomade containers or tissue paper rubbed with it. There were even teachers who would spray pomade at school gates during mass panic periods. And yes, it said that yelling the word pomade 3 times can cause her to retreat in fear. This is eerily similar to Western ghost stories where names or smells can repel spirits. It's another sign of how cultures overlap in their supernatural beliefs. Avoid her favorite spots. As we learned in earlier parts of the story, Kuchisake-Onna appears in very specific places and times. Narrow alleys, dim streets, school routes after dark. Survivors often report that she doesn't appear randomly. She prefers specific feeding grounds. If you stay in groups, walk in well-lit areas, or avoid shortcut alleys, you drastically reduce your chances of encountering her. One interesting real-life example. During a local panic in Gaifu in 1980, city officials placed bright lights along several child walking routes and temporarily banned kids from using narrow back streets. Local volunteers even stood guard during dusk hours. No one reported seeing her during that month, but when the guards were removed, several students again claimed to hear her whispers. Survivor testimonies real or fabricated? Of course, skeptics argue that these survivor stories are inventions by terrified children trying to cope with fear. Urban legends evolved precisely this way, through folk adaptation. Every new version adds a little twist, something hopeful, a chance to fight back. But that doesn't mean the fear isn't real. In 1979, several children in Hyogo Prefecture went missing, and though police never confirmed a connection to Kuchisake-Onna, local parents insisted the ghost was involved. One surviving girl, barely 6 years old, told her mother that she said she was average, and the lady didn't get mad. Whether fabricated or real, The tale spread like wildfire and reinforced the idea that her question could be answered just right. Even today, forums and message boards in Japan carry threads where people swear by these methods. Some claim they've used them, others say they heard stories from their grandparents, and some just want to believe that if it ever happened to them, they'd have a way to survive. Final thought: folk wisdom or shared delusion? Whether these escape methods are true or not, they serve a powerful function in culture. They turn a hopeless, terrifying ghost into something maybe beatable. They give children and adults a sense of control, some way to push back against the darkness. Even if you don't believe in Kuchisake-Onna, the fear she represents is universal. The fear of being trapped, of being judged, of having no right answer. But in the darkest of tales, the smallest light, like a piece of candy or a clever word, might just be the thing that keeps you alive, or at least lets you run a few seconds longer. A woman betrayed and slit her own mouth for love. They say that behind every ghost lies a tragedy. And for Kuchisake-Onna, the slit-mouthed woman who haunted Japan in terror-filled whispers, there is one theory darker and more sorrowful than most. While many believe she is merely an urban legend, birthed from post-war panic or mythologized fear, others insist her origin is rooted in an older pain of betrayal so deep that it tore both her face and her soul apart. This is the story people dare only whisper after midnight, long before she became the infamous spirit asking, "Am I beautiful?" on dimly lit streets. She was said to be a real woman, a woman who once lived in Kyoto, known not by the name Kuchisake-Onna, but simply as Eiko. Eiko was, by all accounts, stunning. She had pale, porcelain skin, eyes that glistened like wet ink, and long black hair that flowed like silk down her back. Men turned their heads as she passed. Women admired and envied her beauty. She was a traditional beauty of her time, but more than that, she was kind, and she was in love. Her husband, a samurai named Hayato, was equally admired for his sharp mind and fierce loyalty to his clan, to the outside world. They were the perfect couple, grace and strength entwined, but no one knew the cracks forming beneath the surface. Hayato was a proud man, the kind who held his honor like a sword, never letting it fall, never allowing it to be stained. And Eiko, with her breathtaking looks, began attracting too much attention. People gossiped, as they always do, harmless rumors at first, that a merchant lingered too long by her stall at the market, that a young apprentice blushed too deeply when she served him tea. But then came the whispers Hayato couldn't ignore, that Eiko was meeting someone in secret, that she smiled too softly at the wrong man, that she had betrayed him. Whether the rumors were true no longer mattered because to Hayato, perception was truth. One cold autumn night, Hayato came home earlier than expected. The lanterns flickered as he entered their home, the sound of his sandals scraping against the wooden floor echoing through the silence. Eiko turned, her face lighting up, but Hayato's eyes were not soft, they were dark, burning with suspicion. "What were you doing this evening?" he asked calmly. "I was in the garden," Eiko replied, unsure of why her heart was suddenly racing. "With whom?" She hesitated. "With no one. I was alone." And that pause, barely a second, was all it took to shatter everything. No one knows exactly what happened that night, only that Eiko was never seen the same way again. Some say Hayato, in a fit of rage and wounded pride, took his blade and slashed her from ear to ear, screaming, "If beauty is what they want, then let them see it like this." Others believe it was Eiko herself, driven to despair by shame and heartbreak, who picked up the blade and carved the smile across her own face, muttering, "Will you love me now?" Whichever version you believe, the result was the same: a woman disfigured beyond recognition. Heartbroken beyond repair, she vanished after that. Some say she wandered into the forest and died from her wounds. Others claim she drowned herself in the Kamo River, her kimono floating like a wilted blossom beneath the moonlight. And then, the sightings began. Decades passed, then came the first reports. A woman in a surgical mask, standing on lonely roads at night. She would stop pedestrians, mostly children, teens, the vulnerable. Her voice was gentle, almost shy. "Do you think I'm beautiful?" If they answered no, she killed them on the spot. If they said yes, she removed her mask, revealing the horrific slit from ear to ear, jagged and red, as if still fresh. How about now? Most people screamed, tried to run. Some say they didn't make it more than a few steps. And yet, for all the horror, the old women of the village, ones with sunken eyes and trembling hands, would whisper that Kuchisake-Onna was just Eiko, a heart broken beyond the veil of death, a woman still asking the question her husband never answered. Am I beautiful? She wasn't a demon, they said. She was grief made ghost, pain turned poltergeist. Over time, new details were added to her legend. Some claimed she could teleport. Others said she hid in shadows, emerging only when you were truly alone. There were even stories of her haunting mirrors suspiciously in school restrooms, waiting for a girl too curious or too daring to whisper her name 3 times. But despite all the added layers, one thing remained consistent: her tragic origin. In fact, a few rare historical records from Kyoto's archives in the 1800s describe a noblewoman disfigured by her jealous husband, whose body was never recovered. One faded drawing even depicted a woman with what looked like a stitched-up Smaline image, eerily similar to modern accounts of Kuchisake-Onna. Is it a coincidence or proof that Eiko was real? One chilling tale comes from a man named Osamu, who was a school teacher in the early 1970s. He had never believed in ghosts until one night, walking home alone, he saw her. She stood by a vending machine, half hidden in shadow, wearing a trench coat and a surgical mask. He almost walked past her, but then she called out, "Sensei." He turned. "Yes. Do you think I'm beautiful?" He paused, remembering the old tales the students used to joke about. A cold sweat began to form on his back. He chose his words carefully. "You look ordinary." She tilted her head. Ordinary? Not too beautiful, not too plain, just normal. She was silent. Then, to his astonishment, she bowed her head slightly. "You are honest," she whispered, and when Osamu blinked, she was gone. Some say this encounter supports the theory that Eiko Kuchisake-Onna not purely evil, that deep inside the spirit remains a woman desperate to be seen, not feared, that those who acknowledge her, not with flattery or lies, but with calm honesty, may be spared. It's a fragile theory, one wrapped in uncertainty, but it gives people hope. There's also a growing belief that Kuchisake-Onna appears during times of collective anxiety, especially among young people. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, when children in Japan were under immense academic and social pressure, sightings surged. Some psychologists suggest she embodies societal fears, beauty standards, pressure to conform, suppressed trauma. Others disagree, saying, "No, she is not a symbol. She is a ghost, and she's real." What makes her story endure is not just the horror, it's the sorrow beneath it. The sense that she didn't choose this fate. That perhaps, if someone had listened, or loved her differently, she might never have become a monster. Some say her soul is still wandering, lost between this world and the next, still asking, quietly, "Am I beautiful?" And if you're ever walking home alone in Japan in a foggy evening, with no one else around and a woman in a mask approaches you, remember this. Don't run. Don't lie. And whatever you do, don't say she's too beautiful. Because love didn't save her. It broke her. And now, she waits with a crooked smile and a question that has no right answer. Rearview mirror shows someone sitting in the back seat. Not every encounter with Kuchisake-Onna happens face to face. Some of the most terrifying stories aren't about a woman standing in front of you with a mask and a pair of scissors. Sometimes she's already in your car, and you don't realize it's too late. In recent years, stories of Kuchisake-Onna have taken on a modern twist. With the rise of technology, smartphones, and rear-view cameras, people have begun reporting bizarre sightings. But these aren't just urban legends passed down in whispers. These are real stories caught on video, reported in the dead of night, by people who were never the same afterward. There was no one behind me. It was a cold evening in Nagoya. Sato, a 27-year-old office worker, had stayed late for overtime. It was close to midnight when he finally left the company building and headed to his car parked on the 5th floor of an empty parking structure. Everything was eerily quiet. Not a single soul around. He got into the driver's seat, locked the doors, and started the engine. As he began backing out, he glanced into the rearview mirror. That's when he froze. For a split second, there was a blurry figure in the back seat. Long black hair, white clothing, pale skin. But when he turned around, there was nothing there. He chalked it up to exhaustion, wiped his eyes, and drove out of the lot. But the dread didn't leave him. As he drove through the city, the streetlights flickered strangely. A feeling of being watched crept into his bones. He glanced into the rearview mirror again. And again, she was there. But this time clearer. Her mouth stretched unnaturally from ear to ear. Blood stained her chin. Her eyes locked with his through the reflection. And then, she smiled. Sato slammed on the brakes, swerved to the side of the road, jumped out, and ran, leaving his car behind. He was found an hour later by a security guard, sitting on the curb, shaking uncontrollably. When asked what happened, all he could say was, "She asked me if she was beautiful." Haunted by reflections. It seems that mirrors are a portal. Kuchisake-Onna, they say, doesn't always need to walk through your front door or appear on a sidewalk. Sometimes, she uses reflections. And in today's world, reflections are everywhere: windows, phones, sunglasses, even puddles on the street. One of the most disturbing videos that made rounds on dark forums in Japan showed a taxi driver live streaming his night shift for fun. The camera was fixed on the dashboard, filming both the road and the driver's face. In the back seat, empty at the beginning, something begins to blur. Not clearly, not suddenly, just subtly. Frame by frame, viewers noticed that a shadow was forming. By the 17th minute, two faint eyes were visible. At 24 minutes, a smile stretched across the empty seat. And by 30 minutes, the feed abruptly cut out. The streamer was never heard from again. The only trace, a comment he had typed moments before the stream went dark. "Who got into my car? I didn't stop." Security cam footage, the woman who walked through glass. In a small convenience store in Osaka, a chilling incident occurred that still baffles the employees. It was just past 3 a.m. when the night shift worker, a young woman named Aika, heard the door chime ring, but no one entered. She looked up and saw nothing. Shrugging it off, she returned to stacking shelves. A few minutes later, the automatic doors slid open again. Still no one. But the CCTV footage told a different story. When the manager reviewed the recording the next morning, they found something unnerving. At 3:06 a.m., a woman with long hair and a surgical mask stood motionless just outside the store. Her eyes stared directly at the camera. Then, without triggering the motion sensors, without opening the door, she appeared inside the store. She didn't walk in. She appeared, and for a single frame, her mask vanished, revealing the mouth slit open, stretched into a horrific grin. In the final seconds of the footage, she turned to the camera and mouthed something. Experts slowed the clip down, frame by frame. She said, "Am I beautiful? Vehicles, the new hunting ground?" One theory circulating among supernatural researchers is that modern ghosts evolve with society. In feudal times, they haunted forests and wells. In the 20th century, they stalked alleyways and abandoned schools. And now, they ride in cars. It makes sense. The car is a confined space. Mirrors are everywhere. You're isolated, distracted, vulnerable. Perfect hunting conditions. There's a story from a delivery driver in Fukuoka who claimed he once picked up a woman late at night. She was wearing a mask and asked to be dropped off near an old temple. The ride was silent until she suddenly asked, "Do you think I'm pretty?" The driver, familiar with the legend, immediately broke into a cold sweat. He responded, trying to sound calm, "Yes, but I don't really notice that kind of thing." She didn't speak again. When he dropped her off and looked in the rearview mirror to say goodbye, she was gone. The back seat was empty. The passenger door had never opened. They see her but you don't. An unsettling pattern has emerged in several documented encounters. She appears only in reflections. There was a case of a teenager who posted a TikTok-style video. While sitting in the back seat of his mother's car, he made funny faces, then tilted his phone to show the front seats. In the reflection of the driver's side window just for a second, someone was sitting beside him. A pale woman in white. But his mother wasn't even in the car. Viewers caught it. Comment after comment asked, "Who was that in the window?" The boy deleted the video the next day. Later, he posted a final message. "If you see her in your mirror, don't look again." The unwritten rules of survival. With the growing number of mirror-related sightings, whispers of mirror rules have begun to circulate among the online community. If you see her in your rearview mirror, don't turn around. Turning around gives her an invitation. If your dashcam glitches or flickers, pull over immediately and exit the car. Electronics go haywire when she's near. If a masked woman suddenly appears in your back seat, ask her, "Are you lost?" Do not answer her question. Distract her. Break eye contact. Her power comes from your gaze in the reflection. And never speak her name aloud inside your car. It's said to summon her directly behind you. The truck driver's last trip. The final story comes from a dashcam recovered from a truck crash near the foot of Mt. Fuji. The driver, Takashi, had been traveling a quiet route around midnight. The footage showed a normal drive until around 12:48 a.m., when the lights inside the cabin began to flicker. Then came a faint whisper, hard to make out at first but unmistakable after a few seconds. "Am I pretty?" Takashi didn't respond. The camera caught him glancing nervously into the rearview mirror and slamming the brakes. The truck swerved off-road and collided with a tree. The last image on the dashcam was haunting. Takashi's eyes wide with terror, frozen on the mirror, and in the glass just barely visibly smile. These aren't just ghost stories, these are warnings. Because if she can appear in a mirror, she can be behind you right now. So the next time you're driving late at night and you glance into your rearview mirror, ask yourself, are you sure you're alone? And if you hear a whisper from the back seat, asking if she's beautiful, don't answer. Just drive, and never look again. The shaman said, she no longer belongs to this world, but hasn't moved on yet. There's a phrase often whispered in hushed voices at old temples in rural Japan. Not all spirits cross over, and for those who've heard the name Kuchisake-Onna, they know exactly what that means. By now, her story has traveled far beyond her native prefecture. She's no longer just a chilling urban legend to scare school children or deter late-night wanderers. She has become something far more disturbing, a ghost caught between worlds, bound not by ropes or chains, but by pure, consuming hatred. But what keeps a soul like that from passing on? That's the question spiritual masters and shamans across Japan have struggled to answer, especially after the rise in eerie, unexplained events connected to mirrors, car accidents, and strange sightings. Some believe she's not just haunting one place, but tethering herself to anything that reflects, moves, or listens. A visit to the old temple, at the base of Mount Osor, one of the most sacred and spiritual locations in Japan, stands a forgotten shrine. It's where people have gone for centuries to speak with the dead. Guided by blind mediums known as Itako, these women, trained from childhood, perform ancient rituals to contact wandering spirits. It was here that a monk named Hoshinori had a chilling experience that reshaped his understanding of restless spirits. In the late summer of 2017, after reports of multiple car crashes on a mountain road nearby, all involving the same detail, the driver saw a woman with a slit mouth smiling in the rearview mirror. Locals begged Hoshinori to intervene. Reluctantly, he agreed. "I didn't believe the stories," Hoshinori later confessed. "I thought they were just urban myths." But what he encountered changed him forever. The exorcism attempt. With a team of 2 younger monks and an old Itako, they returned to the spot where the accidents had occurred. The forest around the road was eerily quiet. No birds, no wind. Just an unnatural stillness. The Itako began her chants, burning a senko, special incense, and calling to the spirit that lingered. For nearly 20 minutes, nothing happened. Then suddenly, every candle they brought with them went out simultaneously. The Itako's voice broke into a sharp, trembling whisper, "She's here." According to all 3 men, the air grew dense, and a rotten stench filled the area. One of the monks began vomiting uncontrollably, while the other fell unconscious. Hoshinori, shaken, asked the Itako what she saw. Her reply was barely audible. "She has no home, no rest. She does not want peace, she wants them to suffer." The binding of the spirit. That night, they returned to the temple and performed a kaifuin ritual, a sacred binding designed to contain malevolent spirits within a specific item. In this case, a ceremonial mirror covered in prayer seals. The mirror was placed in a stone box and buried beneath layers of salt, deep inside the temple's earth chamber. For a while, peace returned to the mountain road. No more sightings, no more accidents. But 3 weeks later, the mirror cracked on its own. The seals had burned from the inside. The Itako, now bedridden and frail, said in her final breath, "She cannot be bound. She is not just a ghost. She is grief turned poison. Why she cannot cross over? Unlike ordinary spirits, who may linger for reasons like unfinished business or emotional attachment, Kuchisake-Onna's case is different. Shamans believe she died in the most violent of emotional states: betrayal, humiliation, and rage all at once. It's said that the pain of being disfigured by her own husband, a man she once trusted and loved, carved her soul just as deeply as the blade carved her face. And when she died, that pain didn't fade. It evolved. According to spiritual experts, when someone dies in such intense emotional torment, their spirit may not even realize they've died. They exist in a loop, reliving the betrayal over and over, unable to let go. Some shamans even refer to her as a yurei with a split anchor, meaning her soul is tied to multiple places, multiple people, and multiple triggers. The spiritual imprint. What's worse is her ability to imprint herself onto reflective surfaces. Mirrors, glass, water, even the metallic gleam of a smartphone screen. In Tokyo, a man once reported that every time he took a selfie at night, a blurred figure appeared in the background. First, it looked like a smudge, then a shadow. Eventually the clear image of a woman with long black hair and a grotesque, slit smile. When he brought the phone to a monk for cleansing, the monk dropped it instantly, terrified. He claimed the device burned like fire in his hands. The phone was destroyed, but days later, the same man vanished without a trace. She follows grief. Another theory comes from a modern onmuji, a spiritual practitioner who combines ancient magic with contemporary understanding. He believes that Kuchisake-Onna is drawn not just to mirrors, but to people with emotional wounds, especially heartbreak, betrayal, or guilt. She feeds off those emotions, he said. She doesn't just haunt places, she haunts people. One case involved a young woman named Naomi, who was recovering from a toxic relationship. After her breakup, she moved to a new apartment in Osaka. But strange things began happening. Every time she cried while looking in the bathroom mirror, her reflection smiled even when she didn't. Naomi reported hearing whispers through the pipes and shadows moving beneath the surface of her bathtub water. One night, after a violent breakdown, she smashed all the mirrors in her apartment. The next morning, on her bathroom wall, was written in red lipstick, "Does this make me beautiful now?" Tied by thirst for vengeance. Despite the rituals, the exorcisms, and the sealing ceremonies, none have truly succeeded in setting her free. Every attempt seems only to anger her more. One Buddhist monk from Kyoto once explained it best: some souls don't want salvation, they want symmetry. If she was made to suffer, she believes everyone else must too. And thus, her spirit remains not roaming aimlessly, but actively seeking those she considers worthy of torment. Drivers who cheated, lovers who lied, friends who betrayed. She whispers through rearview mirrors, walks in reflections, and smiles when you're most vulnerable. The ghost in modern times. In a world obsessed with appearances, filtered selfies, cosmetic surgeries, image perfection, Kuchisake-Onna is more relevant than ever. Her legend has twisted into new forms. Now, she's whispered about in chat rooms, ghost hunting forums, even augmented reality games. But those who joke about her name too often end up experiencing something strange soon after. Phone static during calls, seeing their own reflection smile when they didn't. Sudden urges to cover their faces with masks, not knowing why. Is there any way to help her? According to some priests, the only chance of helping her move on would be an act of true empathy, someone looking past her horror and offering genuine compassion. There are rumors, unverified, of course, of one boy who saw her and didn't run. Instead of screaming, he said, "You don't look scary, you look sad." She didn't attack him. Instead, she vanished. No one knows who he was. Some think it's just a fabricated internet tale. But for believers, it gives hope, because maybe, just maybe, she doesn't want to be Kuchisake-Onna forever. Maybe she wants to be seen, truly seen, as the woman she once was, not the monster she became. Conclusion. Kuchisake-Onna is not a mere ghost story. She's a symbol of grief that festers, betrayal that never fades, and beauty destroyed by the hands of someone meant to protect it. She lingers not out of choice, but because the world keeps feeding her pain. So next time you look in a mirror late at night and see something strange in the reflection, don't look away too quickly, because she might not be gone yet. She might still be waiting.